In a not-so-surprising move, the Texas Department of Public Safety filing an appeal today, blocking the media from seeing its information stemming from the Robb Elementary school shooting.
Last week, a Travis County judge signed off on what the law enforcement agency had to provide to more than a dozen media organizations, including KSAT 12, after a legal battle that had already lasted more than a year.
KSAT investigates Lee Waldman with why the lawyer who filed that lawsuit says this move by the DPS reaffirms this is a cover-up for a blundered response.
I don't know of any situation that has been as big a cover-up as this one in Texas history.
Attorney Laura Prather is holding no punches, calling the fight between the Texas Department of Public Safety and media organizations an unprecedented cover-up.
What we're fighting for is the information about what happened that day, which we have been told by DPS is 2.8 terabytes of data.
Prather, the chair of the media practice group at Haynes Boone, says that is the equivalent of 700 two-hour movies, almost 1 million photos.
All of that information has been kept from you, from me, from the families in Uvalde for more than a year and a half. It needs to become public.
Let's take you through a timeline. After initially praising the law enforcement response to the shooting at Robb Elementary, Governor Greg Abbott then changed his narrative 2 days later, saying he was misled. That same day, the Department of Public Safety Director, Colonel Steve McCraw, says the decisions made in the first moments of that shooting were wrong. Months later, in September, McCraw was confronted by CNN. McCraw at that time says if there was any wrongdoing by members of DPS, he would step down. As of February of this year, 2 DPS officers have been let go for their roles in the response. McCraw hasn't stepped down. That same month, McCraw testified in front of a Senate committee saying the investigation was done back in December of 2022 and that it had been turned over to the Uvalde County District Attorney. He also said that investigative material would be released publicly when it was completed. That has yet to happen a year later. With the appeal DPS has now filed blocking the court-ordered release of information, we could be waiting for answers much longer.
That appeal process could take years. And those families would be without any closure and without any retribution for what happened that day.
At the end there, you heard Prather mention retribution for what happened that day. Coming up at 6, we're diving into what this appeal could mean for lawsuits filed by families of victims and survivors. For KSAT Investigates, I'm Lee Waldman.
Tonight, a blow in the fight for information over a year and a half after the Robb Elementary school shooting. The Texas Department of Public Safety filed an appeal to block the release of court-ordered information.
KSAT and more than a dozen other media organizations fighting for access to video footage, call logs, forensic and ballistic records, and other items. So we have a complete picture of exactly what happened in Uvalde on May 24th, 2022.
At 5 o'clock, the attorney who filed the suit called DPS's actions a cover-up. Now she's telling KSAT Investigates Lee Waldman this lawsuit could prevent the families of victims and survivors from pursuing justice for their loved ones.
What people need to understand is not only do the families not get closure without knowing what happened that day, but they also have claims that are at stake here.
There's more at risk than just transparency and clarity when it comes to the Department of Public Safety's appeal filed in a lawsuit seeking materials related to its response in the Robb Elementary school shooting. Families of the victims and some of the survivors have filed what's called a 1983 claim.
That's a claim that is brought against a governmental body, employees, agencies who didn't act in a manner in which they were supposed to act.
Those claims have a statute of limitations of 2 years. That's 5 months from now. Laura Prather, a lawyer with Haynes Boone who is representing various media companies who filed the media lawsuit last August, says without the materials they're seeking, those claims don't stand a chance.
If all of the evidence that supports their claims is kept under wraps, those families will not have the evidence they need due to DPS choosing to appeal.
Since the shooting, material related to the failed law enforcement response has been leaked to the media. Prather says that may not meet the burden of proof the families need for their claims.
Leaked evidence is not authenticated evidence.
The appeal filed by DPS today would keep the official release of information wrapped up in court proceedings for months or even years.
What is behind the investigation that you are so concerned about keeping private? Doesn't law enforcement want us to trust them? And in order for us to trust them in the future, we need to know what happened that day.
For KSAT Investigates, I'm Lee Waldman.